Good evening, ladies and gentlemen that are watching me here on Black Hot Fire Network. It is a Monday. Today is 22nd of April. Yeah, this month is also going. I'm INNOSSETU, that's my name. Um, and unfortunately, I'm always with a colleague here, and that is Maria. But today I'm going to be alone in studio. Yes, I will manage. I'm going to be alone. Since last week, she had some illnesses that she has not recovered well. She's not feeling well, but I'm going to be here. I'm going to take you through all the 3 hours. I'm going to be taking you. Key, thank you for that pay today. Today, Key sent me some money. Key, thank you for that pay today. I received it. Yeah, I got it. Electricity has not been on along the day, but I got the pay. So I replied late, but I got the pay. Key, thanks for that money that you sent me. Um, like I always say, if you're watching me for the first time, let it be Facebook, Twitter, follow, and of course, like the page. Facebook, do the same, follow and like the page. YouTube, subscribe to Black Hot Fire Network 2 channel, subscribe, like our videos, and also all other uh, social media platforms that are for Black Hot Fire Network. Endeavor to like and follow this social Black Hot Fire Network session. Black Hot Fire Network is beyond blogging, is beyond YouTube. It is an online radio where you can be seeing someone live on radio. Actually, you can even download our app from the Play Store. You can download this app. You can go to your phone and of course go to the Play Store and type in Black Hot Fire Network radio station, and of course you can get live broadcasts because we do broadcast um, different shows over the day, dependingly politics, entertainment, culture, and of course financial issues here in Black Hot Fire Network with our colleagues that are in Kenya. I'm broadcasting live from Kampala, Uganda. Like I said, today's topic is about UK deportation to Rwanda. UK's plans to deport people to Rwanda. Since last year, uh, in fact, since 2022, UK has been UK has been making plans of deporting people to the Republic of Rwanda, which a lot of people, of course, have looked into this, and we look at this as something which is not fair because geographically, Rwanda is a small area. Rwanda has a small area, so to me, it couldn't be favorable to be sending someone to a smaller country, depending on the number, because whenever a country is small, there are a lot of issues um, there are a lot of issues that are of course related, and we have those common problems we as African countries, like unemployment, like bad or of course health care system, uh, the poor infrastructure. However, Rwanda takes some position in African countries to be looking good, to be, of course, looking good, clean stuff, but all African countries have problems. So, going into the statement, that of course, um, that of course talks about how people in Rwanda, how people are going to be deported to Rwanda, no matter where you came from, they're going to be taken to Rwanda. So, um, we see that Rashi Sunaka has acknowledged that he's of course shop his policy to transport asylum seekers to Rwanda will miss his original spring deadline. So, but as he stepped up his bid to win final parliamentary approval of the plan, the UK Prime Minister vowed that flights would leave every month until they had, of course, deterred undocumented migration across the channel. So we see that I said that the first flights will leave in 10 to 12 weeks. That is what Sunaka said at the Downing Street press conference on Monday, indicating that he did not expect the first deportation flights of asylum seekers to leave for Rwanda until July this year. So he had previously promised that flights would begin in the spring months ahead of the general election expected in the second half of this year. However, the government argues that the Rwanda policy will deter people from taking the small boats that have, of course, ferried thousands of irregular migrants across to the UK in recent years. But opposition parties depict it as an expensive and inoffensive gimmick on the politically explosive topic. So the success of this deterrent, of course, doesn't rest on one flight alone, Sunaka said, promising a regular rhythm of multiple flights every month over the summer and beyond until the boats are stopped. So Home Office data shows that over 6,000 people have arrived by small boats so far this year, of course, a 25% increase compared with the same period in 2023. So the UK Prime Minister added that the commercial charter planes and hundreds of trained staff were ready to take asylum seekers to Africa, and that and of course an airfield had been embarked for the purpose. He said that he would force MPs to sit on Monday, possibly this today, into the night until the standoff with the House of Lords over Rwanda legislation was settled. He blamed Labour for holding up the legislation and delaying the start of deportation flights. So, government insiders had, of course, hoped the Rwanda bill, which declares the African nation safe in a bid of find of judicial challenges, would complete its, of course, parliamentary passage last week. But the plan has been, of course, savagely criticized by the government opponents on both the left and right. We see that Yvette Copper, Labour's shadow home secretary, described the scheme as an of course, extortionate, a gimmick, nothing that it would cost over £500 million to send just 300 people to Kigali. This is something that is exploitative. Yet we see that UK is going through financial hardships now. So Niguel, of course, Farage, Honorable President of the right-wing party Reform UK, attacked the policy on X as a con job from the Tories that would be blocked by the courts. So while the government can push the bill through the House of Commons, it does not have a majority in the Lords. Peers have, of course, repeatedly amended the bill only for MPs to overturn the changes. Last week, peers approved two fresh amendments. One stated that Rwanda cannot be deemed as safe country until it fully implements an independent, of course, monitoring committee for its asylum system, while another would expect some refugees, including Afghans, that have, of course, served alongside UK armed forces from failing within the scope of the scheme. So the government has rejected both as unnecessary. We see that Sunak also admitted there had been a spike in the number of vulnerable Vietnamese migrants paying criminal gangs to enter the country this year. However, Of course, Vietnamese arrivals have, of course, increased tenfold and accounted for almost all the increase in small boat numbers we have seen this year. He said, the truth is, we need innovative solutions to address what is a global migration crisis to disrupt the business model of people smuggling gangs and the means of systematic deterrent. So he attacked Reba as having no plans on irregular migrations. They are, of course, resigned to the idea that you will never fully, of course, solve this problem. He said, be in no doubt about the choice that the country will face later this year. So, be free. That is what, of course, that has been discussed today between Sunak and, of course, the opposition parties in UK about the deportation of people to Rwanda. But for me, for me, maybe, maybe I'm not informed fully, but like a country like UK, it is something that is fairly, of course, injustice. It is something uh, that is hypocritical, something that is. However, maybe this Sunak guy, the prime minister, is just planning to, of course, to eat this money because only 300 people cost billions of UK pounds to be taken to Rwanda. So, yet Rwanda, this is a small place. Even Uganda is bigger than Rwanda. Rwanda is a small place. So, you can't set off people to go to Rwanda. You can't set off people you, of course, you consider to be gang leaders, the people you consider to be people that are threat to a government, people that are wrongdoers. You send them to, of course, African countries like Rwanda. This is something that which doesn't add up to me. It doesn't add up well because this is illegal. These people are not censored. These people they have no document. They just carry you to Rwanda. So I was discussing some time back with Maria about how how Brazil came to be a white territory because we see white Brazilians, yet Brazil sometime back had, of course, a black people. It is the same case they did. You never know. These people, it might be an intentional deal uh, to first of all merge within the Rwandan people so that they can create another community of white race within Rwanda. Because you can't be telling me that like all the migrants, all illegal, because actually all illegal migrants, asylum seekers in UK, they must be said to, of course, to Rwanda. We see that the United Kingdom has been, of course, embroiled in the legal battle over its policy to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda. So the first charter flight of deportees was scheduled to depart on June 14th, but the European Court of Human Rights intervened minutes before takeoff, citing a risk of course, irreversible harm associated with the plan. So the British government intends to challenge this decision, however, and has expressed its commitment to pursue more deportation flights. So one may be asking, why is UK sending asylum seekers to Rwanda? We see that the aims to deter irregular migration into the country, the number of migrants attempting to, of course, perilous journey across the English Channel on small vessels has been surged, of course, significantly. So we see that detected arrivals of this nature escalated from 229 in 2018 to over 28,000 people last year. So Rwanda in turn hosts a growing number of refugees and has established a transit center for deported asylum seekers since 2019. And additionally, we see that Rwanda hosts Libyan migrants who have tried to reach Europe via Mediterranean Sea. So last year, the Danish government also signed a non-binding agreement with Rwanda to host their refugees. While, of course, the UK Supreme Court refused to consider the last ditch of appeal, the ECHR stepped in and, of course, reviewed the cases of each individual on the flight. It ruled that any Iraqi man should not board the flight, opening the door. Other would be a deportees to win, of course, appeals. So the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, we see that opposes this policy, considering it an outsourcing of the United Kingdom's international obligations. So the United Nations Human Rights Commission for, of course, refugees asserts that there is no evidence that the current policy effectively deters dangerous crossings across the English Channel. So, in summary, we see that UK deportation policy to Rwanda remains contagious. With the legal challenges and humanitarian concerns at the forefront. However, um, talking about we are seeing that all countries outside, all of them, they are going in for Rwanda. I don't know why. They have their reasons why they are doing so, where they are taking people to Rwanda. But Rwanda as a country, it has its internal problems. We know, but like everyone in Europe sends off asylum seekers to Rwanda. What does this imply? What does this what is this going to lead to? Because there are a lot of people in Rwanda suffering from, of course, malnutrition. People suffering from people not getting food. There are a lot of youths that are unemployed within Rwanda. So what is behind taking people to Rwanda? I don't think Rwanda is the best place for to take refugees, because it's not UK that is sending off refugees to Rwanda. Like there are very many countries. We have seen a lot of countries sending off refugees to Rwanda, but Rwanda as a country, it has its own problems as a country. So Rwanda, we see that Rwanda is currently grappling with several challenges. To start with, we see that deportation controversy. In 2022, Britain announced a plan to deport unwanted asylum seekers to Rwanda. However, this policy faced significant backlash and legal challenges. So the first deportation flight was cancelled due to the appeals from individuals who had fled danger in their home countries and sought refuge in UK. So the situation raised questions about the coherence and consistency of the deportation plan. Yes, we see that most of these asylum seekers are in UK. These are people that committed crimes in their home countries, like that Iraqi man that, of course, that was on the flight that was setting off the first flight that was going to Rwanda, where, of course, the Human Rights Commission for Refugees came in and stood against this. We see a lot of people that committed crimes, robbers, murderers, terrorists, they're going to be taken to Rwanda. So Africa, we are yet to see. Maybe it has not happened by now, but we are yet to see um, instabilities within Africa. Now, these criminal people, these criminals, they are going to be, of course, escalating. They are going to be, of course, spreading to other African countries just from Rwanda. And UK is doing this thing intendedly, just because they think Africa is a dumping place for everything. Uh, Substandard goods. Now they're even sending criminals to Africa in the name of refugees. People actually that would have been charged for what they did, they are sending them to Africa. They're sending them to Rwanda, and they're going to spread. They're going to start with East Africa, and it's near. East Africa is near. They're going to spread it to Uganda. They're going to spread it to Kenya, Tanzania, Democratic Republic of Congo, um, Burundi. We are going to see some of them in Zanzibar, just because of this, of course. This deportation plan, this deportation deal. And I guess it's not for free. The UK government is it's having some money that is going to be backed, that is going to back these refugees to that country, to Rwanda. So we see that economic constraints, Rwanda's of course development model, which relies heavily on public sector led investments, has limitations. We see that public debts have increased significantly and physical deficits are being financed through external borrowing. So the country where UK has hope and other European countries to send off unwanted asylum seekers or illegal asylum seekers, the country is experiencing a lot of public debts. The country, if you find a country where majorly the country depends on public sector, the country has a lot of problems, because if at all the public are like, the country is experiencing public debts, how are people going to like to get social services? Just because like the government is responsible for almost everything in a country. How are people going to enjoy? How are people going to be employed? How are people going to, of course, get good, healthy services? How are people going to get good accommodation? But the asylum seekers, they are sending off to Rwanda. I was reading somewhere, and as like they have created them hostels, beautiful hostels to stay in Rwanda, within Rwanda. But we see like there are a lot of there are a lot of Rwandan African people in Rwanda. There are a lot of Rwandese that sleep like dogs, like wild dogs. They sleep like wild pigs within Rwanda. But we see that, so this is something that is terrible. We see that Rwanda, when we talk about human rights concerns, we see that civil society sectors, journalists, and opposition activists who speak out on current affairs and criticize public policies face abusive prosecutions and enforced, of course, disappearances. We see that journalist Williams Ntwali died under suspicious circumstances, raising questions about the press freedom and safety. We see that even in Rwanda, still security forces retain strict children, vendors, sex workers, and beggars ahead of high-profile visits and events. So political opposition remains restricted both within and outside the ruling party as Rwanda approaches its 2024 general election. So we see that this is a country where freedom of course speech is not guaranteed. You're free to talk, but you have a right to talk, but you don't have a right after talking in Rwanda. In Rwanda, sorry, in Rwanda you have a right to talk, but you don't have a right after talking. This is what's going on with Rwanda. A lot of journalists have been, of course, detained and are rotting in Rwandan prisons. A lot of civil society activists and actors have been arrested and have disappeared without trace in Rwanda. So normally USA and of course Britain, the British people, uh, these are people that always come out and be uh, like they're fighting for human rights within African countries. But what I've of course realized over time, whenever USA, whenever UK is having a plan to do in Africa, it will never and never open its mouth about the rights, the human rights in a certain country, because we see that Rwanda is one of those toughest countries where people go through a lot. We see a lot of Rwandese coming in Uganda just because of what's going on in Rwanda. You find someone will be like, no, I'd rather stay in Uganda. Rwanda is not a safe place to stay. I'd rather stay in Kenya. I'd rather stay in Tanzania rather than going back to Rwanda. So a lot goes on. If at all the government, the police arrests, raids and arrests sexual workers, street children. Remember, not every kid wakes up one day and consently stays on streets. But these people are arrested on streets just because there is that picture Rwanda wants to give to the outside world that it is a clean place, it is a politically stable place. All these are myths, if I may say. All these are lies that are made. But UK, I know UK knows everything that is going on in Rwanda. However, it insists However, it insists to send people to Rwanda, to send what they call unwanted asylum seekers to Rwanda or illegal asylum. Remember, these people that, of course, are to be deported to Rwanda or people that they are deporting to Rwanda, these are people that don't have any document to them. Some of them claim not to know where they even came from. So this puts a country into a political tension because different people go to Europe, different people go to UK because of different reasons. But if someone can't acquire documents that arranged documents, someone's names, someone's age, occupation, where he came from, it is something that is terrible. So, but UK is of course not looking through this. UK is not minding on this. Rather, it's just sending off people to go to Rwanda. It's just sending off people to go to Rwanda. But we see that the legal challenges to removals, we see that Rwanda deportation scheme introduced in 2022 has faced legal hurdles. So the Supreme Court blocked an earlier plan, and so far, no asylum seekers have been sent to Rwanda by now. But we see that additionally, we see you're going to allow me go through some of the problems facing Rwanda today. Some of the problems for one to judge like it's not fair to go in or um, to send refugees to Rwanda. We see that the Republic of Rwanda, or Rwanda for short, is a small landlocked country located a few degrees south of the equator at the central part of Africa. So, like I said, Rwanda is very small to, of course, to support these big numbers of these big numbers of asylum seekers, unwanted asylum seekers in Europe, to accommodate them for some good time. I mean, even if they give them money, even if the government of Rwanda is supported with money, it's not enough. This is a small and a small country. So the Republic of Rwanda shares borders with the Republic of Uganda to the north, the Republic of Tanzania to the east, the Republic of Burundi to the south, and the our Congo, a Democratic Republic of Congo to the west. So the Republic of Rwanda has a total land area of about 26,000 square kilometers. So, of which is covered by water. We see that although Rwanda is landlocked, several Great Lakes span the country. Rwanda, unlike most surroundings countries, is at high elevation with its, of course, geography dominated by mountains, especially in the west, and savanna in the east. So Rwanda has an estimated population of 14 million people, with the population growth rate hovering around 2%. Uh, just or about 19% of the Rwanda's population lives in urban areas. So Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, has an estimated metropolitan area population of 1.3 million people. So a greater part of Rwanda's population is into agriculture, with the majority being subsistence farmers who grow crops and rare animals just to feed themselves and their families. So although there are three major ethnic groups living in Rwanda today, Rwandans are drawn from just one culture and linguistic group. So the Banyarwanda within this group, there are three subgroups: the Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa. So the Twa are mostly forested dwelling pygmy people who descended from Rwanda's earliest inhabitants. So we see that scholars disagree on the origins and differences between Hutu and Tutsi. Some believe differences arrived as a result of the former social cattle structures within the single people. So Kinyarwanda, official language; Universal Bantu, of course, vernacular; French, official language; English, official language; Kiswahili, uh, among others, are some of the major languages spoken in Rwanda today. So Christianity remains the most dominant religion in Rwanda today, with over 90% of the population identifying as Christians. So Roman Catholics make up about 56 percent of the population, with Protestants forming about 26%. About 11% are Adventists. Muslims make about 4% of the total population in Rwanda. So Rwanda, just like its neighboring countries, is blessed with abundance of natural resources such as gold, tin, oil, tungsten, methane, hydropower, among others. However, despite the abundance of natural and human resources, just like its neighboring countries, Rwanda is gripped with so many political, social, and developmental challenges. So, there are a lot of there are a lot of political, social, and developmental challenges Rwanda is going through. We see that Rwanda has a literacy rate of about 70% for the total population, with a female literacy rate hovering about 64. In other words, about 70% of the Rwanda's population, about the age 15, can at least read and write. Although isn't too bad, education in Rwanda still falls below expectations compared to some of other lower middle income countries in Africa. So despite of the abundance of human and natural resources in Rwanda, a huge portion of population still lives below the international poverty line, less or living less than $2.15 a day. So poverty in Rwanda is worse, especially in rural areas where the majority of the population lives. So considering its total land area and population size, so the Republic of Rwanda is one of the most overpopulated countries in Africa. Like I said, Rwanda is the Republic of Rwanda is one of the most overpopulated countries in Africa. This is the country where everyone wants to send This is the country where now everyone is looking at to send asylum seekers or refugees. So we see that in fact Rwanda is the most densely populated country on the mainland Africa. Rwanda's population more than doubled between 1978, 4 million people, in 2012, 10 million people. Rwanda currently contains over 14 million people, and the population is expected to grow at a faster rate in the next decade. So, as mentioned earlier, we see that a greater part of Rwanda's population is into agriculture. However, due to overpopulation issues, fertile lands for farming are very hard to come by. And this also explains the rising tensions among the various factions who depend mostly on the land for survival. So, the overpopulation issue is putting much pressure on the available limited resources. For example, the overpopulation issue in Rwanda is resulting in land degradation, the gradual, of course, deterioration of agricultural lands and forest reserves due to mainly human activities, which is not, of course, only affecting food production, but also severely affecting wildlife and environment and climate. So poaching and deforestation, a rampant cutting of down of trees, mostly for timber, firewood, charcoal, among others, are other human activities severely affecting wildlife population in Rwanda today. So Rwanda is one of only two countries in the world where tourists can see mountain gorillas in all their glory. However, poaching of other human activities have severely affected mountain gorilla population due to point of extinction. So another problem is that Rwanda has HIV AIDS adults prevalence of 2%. Officially, there was more than 17,000 people who are living with HIV in 2019 and about 41,000 deaths recorded within the same year. Malaria, bacterial diarrhea, hepatitis A, yellow fever also continue to threaten several lives in Rwanda today. So Rwanda has witnessed huge progress that puts 2 decades thanks to the peace of course, reconciliation for efforts. In fact, we see that the percentage of people living in poverty in Rwanda has, of course, increased from, of course, 5% to 44% in 2012. We see that Rwanda is one of the countries, the smallest countries that, of course, in Africa, that, of course, I will credit that have tried to beautify their, of course, their cities. However, I don't know whether they do it for the sake of the people in Rwanda or otherwise. But we see that when it comes to Black Africans, why is overpopulation a concern? So look at India and China. The primary concern of Rwanda, like an African country, is to own, control, and generate wealth from its resources. So you will never, of course, own, control, and generate wealth from your own resources. Now you have allowed China to own, control, and generate wealth from your own resources. So the resources and wealth generated will be offshored to China with some wealth used to line, of course, pockets of your corrupt authorities. We see that Rwanda is one of the many countries that were able to deal with corruption to some extent. Yeah. So Rwanda is, of course, a scarcest country that, of course, everyone could never wish to go, if I may say. It has no political position as they ever been put inside the prison. So all they run away to other countries. So there is so much poverty in Rwanda, and this causes other problems like theft, murder, and rape. So many people talk about body parts being stolen, They say there is no real policing. It's all done with the army. It is very young democracy. Hopefully, one day it might get better and popularly known with this government that is going in Rwanda. So we see Rwanda, of course, praised by US and most European countries. The truth is that you can't tell the truth or disappear. Development on the highest scale possible, and most vulnerable people just moved away without being asked in Rwanda. So this is a crime towards human beings, and none of the countries ever mentioned it. So the next step is development in a beautiful environment of twin lakes, of course, tourism, but we see a lot a lot happening in Rwanda today. So um, so we see that the Western or the Europe doesn't want more migrants, or UK doesn't want more migrants, but Rwanda is willing to take them. So the small African nation, of course, has positioned itself as an altruistic partner of wealthier countries seeking to curb migration. But experts we see say that Rwanda's human rights records makes it no refugee for asylum seekers. So this should be taken as something that is serious. Human rights are abused so much in Rwanda. If at all, the government can raid and arrest sex workers, street children on streets, take them to prisons. This is something that's something that is not a joke. So we see that Gashora, Rwanda, at a sprawling complex of bleak row houses and gleaming new apartment blocks in this town, wedged between two small lakes, hundreds of Africans have found what they could not elsewhere find. So, refugee after enduring servitude and torture in Libya, we see that they fenced facility in Gashora, about 40 miles south of Rwanda's capital, Kigali, offering stark, clean rooms with double beds, is a way station for refugees awaiting asylum on resentment elsewhere. So, and it is a symbol of the government's efforts to, of course, position Rwanda as a country with a solution to global migration crisis, which is a lie. Which is a lie. So, at times when Western nations are adopting increasingly tough stances against migrants, the tiny nations of Rwanda the tiny nation of Rwanda has opened its border to refugees, striking deals with European countries like Britain, Denmark to house deported asylum seekers. So Rwanda's President Paul Kagame, as he said, his government is motivated by altruism and moral responsibility to provide a solution, a very complicated problem all over the world. But critics, we see that say that the country is seeking to benefit financially, but of course, politically from the arrangements, and is offering itself as the refugee to deflect attention from the problematic record of human rights. So the migration deals with the West as part of the Rwanda's drive to launder its image abroad. We see that Rwanda, a landlocked nation, uh, Rwanda, a landlocked nation with lush, uh, undulating terrain, is one of the smallest, most densely populated countries in Africa. So, so there is no way you can convince me Rwanda is the most smallest in Africa. And of course, the most densely populated, one of the most densely populated countries in Africa. So, Mr. Kagame has been the de facto leader of this nation of 13 million people since the end of 1994 genocide, in which up to 1 million people were massacred in 100 days. Since then, he has transformed the nation into an ambitious state that, of course, punches above its weight politically, economically, and on security front. So Mr. Kagame has also positioned Rwanda as the major host of African refugees. So the country hosts tens of thousands of refugees from countries like Burundi, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Eritrea, Somalia, Sudan, among others. It has received hundreds of African refugees expelled from Israel and has welcomed Afghan schoolgirls fleeing the Taliban. So now Rwanda wants to be a close partner to Western nations desperate to curb illegal migration. So this comes despite the fact Rwanda has jailed and threatened to expel refugees. Rwanda, despite the fact that Rwanda has jailed and threatened to expel refugees. The country has denied refugee to LGBTQ asylum seekers. Activists say that the asylum partnerships are simply meant to buttress the reputation of Mr. Kagame, whose almost three-decade rule has come under increasing scrutiny for suppressing political dissent and free speech within Rwanda. So, So we see that the government of Boris Johnson, the former British Prime Minister, announced a deal to send asylum seekers to Rwanda in hope of reducing the number of people crossing English Channel. In exchange, Rwanda would receive 120 million pounds in economic development programs. So Denmark last year also signed a three-year pact with Rwanda to enhance cooperation in migration, and in August sailed an agreement aimed at, of course, establishing an asylum center in Rwanda. So, so we see that both deals have brought into sharp focus offshore migrant processing and, of course, raised the questions about what responsibility wealthy nations have to refugees fleeing, of course, persecution or hunger. In the United States, Republic governors upset by Biden's administration handling illegal immigration have abused offloading thousands of migrants to liberal leaning territories. So the mayor of New York City, we see that he declared a state of emergency amid the influx of migrants from Latin America. However, we see that Britain's plan has generated legal challenges, with critics are pointing to court evidence showing that even British diplomats in Kigali recommended against using Rwanda because of its dismissal of human rights record. So its efforts in, of course, recruiting refugees to conduct armed operation in neighboring countries, and claims it has carried out extrajudicial killings, forced disappearances, and, of course, torture. So we see that government is simply lying when they say Rwanda is safe for refugees. So one of the British, of course, charities suing to stop the deportation said in an interview that the evidence, she said, shows there is absolutely no doubt that this policy was a brutal, a very morally wrong thing to do. So a ruling by European Court of Human Rights grounded Britain's first flight to, of course, to spirit asylum seekers to Rwanda in June. So It accepts judgments from the European Court of Human Rights. In September, we see that the plan was challenged in London's High Court by asylum seekers who immigrated, who uh, 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 whose immigrant rights groups and the labor union representing the British board expecting to carry out the policy. So this is something that is, of course, serious. Deportation to Rwanda is so we see that uh, we see that rights groups criticized the plan of course, prioritizing short-term financial incentives instead of exploring long-term sustainable solutions to the migration crisis. So, and if we see that advocacy groups deplored the memorandum of understanding between Britain and Rwanda, saying it's not been approved by the Parliament of Britain. So, critics still say that, including the United Nations Refugee Agency, say Britain's deportation policy violates international law and would not deter those risking the dangerous journey through the English Channel. So more than 30,000 people have crossed the channel so far this year, compared with more than 28,000 in all 2021, and just over 8,000 in 2020, according to Britain Home Office. So, despite of the chorus of critics, Britain's conservative-led government pledges to press on with the new prime minister, vowing to expand the plan of Britain's Home Secretary, and of course, which of course has made this possible for people to be sent, and of course to Rwanda. So at the transit center in of course Gashora in Rwanda, refugees get 3 meals a day for the first time. These are the reports that have been reported. And bond over making traditional food like injera, flatbread, or doro what? Of course, Ethiopian spiced chicken. They receive professional counseling, gather before sundown to play volleyball and soccer, and of course, congregate under the tree to say daily prayers. But during the recent interviews with visitors shadowed by Rwanda security officers, none of the refugees said they wanted to stay there anymore. the, the interviews that were made by refugees, none of them wanted to stay in Rwanda anymore. Almost all hoped to make it to Europe. So we see that one said that I have a goal that is to go to Europe, a European country. Uh, that is a 35-year-old man, Abu Bakr, who fled turmoil in the far region in, of course, of Sudan and cannot give up on that. So the transfer of asylum seekers mirrors the colonial practice of moving people against their will in order to further wealthier nations' economic and political goals. Said we see that all this engineer Rwanda to of course support this refugee incomings in of course Rwanda. Like I say, that first Rwanda is one of the smallest countries in Africa and one of the most populated and denselated places in Africa because yes, it is having 14 million by now. Rwanda is estimated to be having 14 million people, but someone may look at 14 million people as a small number of people, but to what, um, like which land are these people, of course, occupying? Rwanda's area, geographical area, is a very small land. So such a small land by now to be having 14 million, it is something that is terrible. We see most of the lands have been cultivated and are no longer fertile. Yet most of the people live in villages. It is estimated for over 1.3 people living in, of course, in urban centers or in Kigali, the capital city of Rwanda. So we see that human beings, of course, we see that before the first British deportation flight was grounded, some asylum seekers attempted to suicide themselves. One man tried to cut his wrist. She said once one of the plane many screamed and begged not to be flown to Rwanda. So Rwandan officials insisted that their agreement with Britain is ideal, that and that country and Africa at large should be viewed as a place for solution. So we do not consider living in Rwanda a punishment. However, we see that very many people are criticizing and are not interested in coming to Rwanda. There are a lot of African countries that are big that can harbor refugees. Why is it that UK is giving this ideal to Rwanda? Even Denmark did. We see that a Congolese refugee said the Rwandan authorities accused him of course, partaking in protests over the cuts of refugee food rations in 2018. So he fled to Kenya, but in 2019 he said he was kidnapped and taken back. Rwanda. Rwanda is not a joking place on this planet. Rwanda is not a joking place on this planet. If you're a refugee, it doesn't mean that they will not arrest you in Rwanda. They arrest and detain. I'm a refugee, I can't be arrested, I can't be detained. They arrest you and they detain you. So we see that the refugee who insisted on, of course, anonymity for fear of retribution said he was, of course, blindfolded and tortured for 10 days by men who accused him of collaborating with the Rwandan opposition. Something that is terrible. He was, of course, rescued, he said, by the Kenyan police almost 200 miles uh, northwest of Nairobi. Rights groups confirmed his case. So, a lot happens. We see that Gush, who is Eritrean, said when he was deported by Israel to Rwanda in 2015, security officials at the airport in Kigali stripped him uh, of his documents and, of course, and working with civilians believed to be smugglers forced him to cross into Uganda. Once in Kampala, the Ugandan capital, Bush, now 50, sought to get to Europe. He endured threats, robberies, and beatings as he traveled through southern Sudan, and Libya. He said after crossing the Mediterranean Sea, he landed in Italy and made it to Switzerland. So, the Rwandan government did not care about us. These are comments, these are claims from the former refugees in Rwanda. The Rwandan government did not care about us as Africans or our rights as human beings. This is what Bush said while in Geneva, and that is Switzerland. Ms. Makoro, the spokesperson for Rwandan government, denied his allegations. Meanwhile, at the transit center in Igashora, refugees are eager to move on. Those included in Nyaranda, a 26-year-old South Sudanese who approved for settlement in Finland. So, before her departure on July, we see that Gatura put on lipstick as her 18-month-old son followed her around. I came here so I could go where I wanted, she said. That is Europe, not Rwanda. So, whenever people plan to go to Europe, African people, they hope to get better. There are reasons that force them to go to, of course,